It's crazy to think that we have had the BMW X5 in our lives for almost 30 years now, and we've had fantastic generations throughout the years. Now in 2025, the X5 finds itself in a very competitive and I think oversaturated market, not only from their direct rivals from Mercedes-Benz, Audi, and Volvo, but now you have mainstream rivals that are coming in at around $50,000 that have great interiors, a lot of luxury features, and in some ways might even be a better value. But the X5 has stood tall for many, many years, and for one more year with this generation, it might still be the best SUV you can buy in today's market. In today's video, we're going to check out what the X5 has to offer us. We're going to check out the exterior, the interior, take it out for a quick test drive, and see why, if you're looking at buying a luxury and upscale two-row crossover, maybe taking a look at the X5 might be a great decision. Now, before we get in this video, I want to give a huge shout and thank you to BMW Sudbury in Sudbury, Massachusetts for letting me come down here to check out the BMW X5. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive BMW inventory. So as always, let's begin with that pricing. For the 2026 BMW X5 we have today, you're looking at a starting cost of just under $70,000. We have the xDrive all-wheel drive system for better year-round capability and versatility, and you can go with rear-wheel drive, but either way, you're still spending a bit more than other rivals in this class, such as the Audi Q7, the Mercedes-Benz GLE, Volvo XC90, and many, many others, because we now have the Hyundai Palisade getting a bit more upscale, and there's a lot of pressure coming beneath where the X5 is priced right now. So the question is, do you get a better value out of those rivals, or do you end up getting what you pay for? Well, we're going to find out throughout this video. Now, as you can tell with the exterior, it hasn't been touched, right? It doesn't look like that X3, doesn't look like an iX or IM. So in a world of those three models, the X5 is very refreshing to look at and stare at. I mean, I can just look at this car all day, especially with this specification, because you can go with the Sport or M Sport. The M Sport gives you the Shadowline package. You also get the M suspension and M steering wheel. But I think with the Sport trim that we have here today, with the classic design, is more than enough for a lot of you. So up front, you are going to receive full LED headlights, but I think for me, it's going to be the kidney grills with the satin chrome accents surrounding those kidney grills. Now, for newer BMWs, those aren't kidney grills, those are lungs. So it has a nice design here for this vehicle. Also, for the lower portion of the front bumper, you got that contrasting accent once again for the lower portion of that bumper, and also inside that lower grille for a nice touch. And you will have functional side air curtains for better efficiency when you are on the highway, so better airflow there. Also, some of you are probably wondering, what is this color? Because it looks really nice. This is Manhattan green. From far away, it kind of looks a bit grayish, a little brownish, but when you get up close, really nice and classy. So it's not going to be too egregious when it comes to that color. I think a lot of you are looking for colors like this. Now, as you make your way over to the side profile, we're sitting on 20-inch alloy wheels. Now, a lot of people are concerned about wheel size, but remember here, with the BMW X5, for one, it is built on the cluster architecture platform, but two, the X5 has been around for a very long time. It's one of the oldest crossovers in this class. I think BMW's figured out the interior insulation and ride quality out of their, I think, best product in the lineup. Now, you are going to have body color match side mirror caps with turn signal indicators to go along with blind spot detection for added safety, and then you have the accents once again outlining the windows. Before we check out the rear fascia, you're also going to have some cladding here for the wheel arches and along the side profile. But thankfully, it's not egregious here. It's not caked on. It blends in very nicely for the X5 for this generation. Then as you make your way around to the back, the first thing I want to take note of here is going to be that taillight design. So you have the X shape here, gives you some definition, right? Like it pops out a bit more, and it just gives you a nice design to this vehicle. Outside of that, though, there's not a lot to take note of here. You're going to notice some gloss black trim outlining the rear window, but aside from that, nothing really out there for this crossover. It can really blend in on the roadways. And then for the lower portion of the rear bumper, you're going to have some contrasting accents once again for the rear diffuser and your dual exhaust outlets. And you're going to notice the cladding once again, but it's not too bad. It's not really going to stick out there like a sore thumb. So I think a lot of you are really going to like what the X5 is offering for 2026, especially since the new generation is coming down the road very quickly. Powering our BMW X5 40 for 2026 is one gem of a motor, the 3-liter turbocharged inline 6, also known as the B58. Producing 375 horsepower and 398 pound-feet of torque, it is paired with the ZF 8-speed automatic transmission, and we have a 48-volt mild hybrid system. Together, this gives BMW a competitive advantage against Volvo, against Mercedes-Benz, against Audi. To have this standard is what's really going to drive a lot of you towards the BMW X5. I also think the B58 is what closes the gap between this model and the Porsche Cayenne, even though the Cayenne is close to $20,000 more expensive. What you are going to notice with this engine, even without the M Sport package, this crossover really moves along. It is quick. It is exhilarating. You don't necessarily need to go with the M60 if you don't want to. Also, another thing too, when you pair this engine with the all-wheel drive system, you're going to have a great year-round daily driver, especially up here in New England. But probably more importantly is going to be that fuel economy. You're looking at right around 23 miles per gallon in the city and 27 miles per gallon on the highway. Not the best from BMW because you can't go with the plug-in hybrid. I would suggest that if you are someone focusing on that fuel economy. But if you want a fun X5, you still have that here with the 40, and it's not egregious when it comes to that fuel efficiency. Hopping inside our BMW X5, this has to be one of the classiest specifications I have ever come across in the BMW lineup, at least for models I have featured. The Manhattan green exterior, which is actually a nice low profile color, kind of looks gray from far away, but you have that tint of green. Very nice there. But then we have a coffee interior with wood grain trim accents on the dashboard and door panels. This just exudes an upscale nature, and this right here is where you notice the difference between the X3 and X5. That the X5 has better interior materials, it feels more upscale, more classy, more luxurious. It is totally worth the price of admission, and I think worth the $20,000 price difference between a base X3 and base X5. Now for our seats, they are power adjustable, heated and ventilated Seraphim seats for both the driver and passenger, with the driver's side having 2-position memory for added convenience. Now you can go with merino leather if you so desire. I have experienced merino leather throughout my years of filming BMWs. I don't really think it's necessary spending the extra money, but that is up to you. With these seats, they're very comfortable, they're supportive, they're plush. Obviously, with this not being an M Sport model, with not being an M60, these seats are not going to be aggressively bolstered, but on longer commutes, longer road trips, weekday drives, you'll find yourself very comfortable here in this vehicle. And just what you have aesthetically sets a tone for this model before you even drive off the lot. Now in front of you will be a heated steering wheel here, which feels really nice in the hands, aggressive 10-2 and firm 9-3 grips. The best part here about the X5 though is that you don't get the hexagonal design for the steering wheel. Now I know some people might like that out of the X3. I kind of like the traditional design here for the interior. Also, physical buttons on the steering wheel to help you control that digital gauge cluster. And speaking of the digital gauge cluster, same layout as what we have seen in a number of different BMW products over the past few years. I'm not going to bore you with the layouts here, but you can display your maps. You can also change out the information that is being displayed here on this screen. And since we do have the head-up display, you can also adjust that as well from this digital gauge cluster. Now, just like we saw with the pre-LCI facelift model, you're still going to have that reflection for that digital gauge cluster. They did a pretty good job of trying to mask that, but unfortunately, every time you get behind the wheel, you have to look at your face. So some of you might be a little haunted by that, like myself. Now, as you take a look at the infotainment system, we have BMW's iDrive 9 software here with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility. Best of all, though, unlike with the BMW X1 and X2, you still have a physical dial here and quick access icons on the center console to scroll through different menus effectively. And it gives you dual functionality, right? A lot of vehicles in this market don't give you that. You're forced to use that touchscreen at all times. BMW is still giving you this layout, and I can really appreciate that. However, the one downside or drawback here to the X5 for the LCI facelifted models is that you don't get physical buttons or dials for your dual zone climate control. And instead, you have a dedicated climate menu here where you can adjust the AC, front and rear defrosters, fan speed, fan direction. Then you have 2 separate icons for your dual zone climate control, your heated and ventilated seats and heated steering wheel. But this isn't as user friendly, right? Like, I know a lot of people are looking for those physical buttons. So take your time if you are hopping into the BMW X5 for the first time. Now, for our model, we also have plenty of camera angles to work with here. We have a top view, side views. We also have that rear backup camera with trajectory. I think for a lot of you, though, you're looking for that 3D view. And this is becoming very common in the automotive industry, but this is one cool feature and neat feature that gives you a lot more safety. If you are backing into tight spots, or maybe you're backing out of a garage, you'll have that safety, you'll have that visibility more importantly. So that's really cool to see, even though some people aren't really into tech right now in the automotive industry. Now, as we continue on, beneath the head unit, you are going to notice this, I don't want to say carbon fiber weave, but it is a fake carbon fiber weave for the dashboard, and that extends into the passenger side. And you're going to notice some accented lighting there, which is pretty cool. I like that touch. Also, you have that little X5 badge, which is really nice. Now, for the center console itself, you are going to notice your volume knob here, and then your tuning buttons, also your hazards, max front and rear defrosters. But then you will have your wireless phone charging pad, another cubby for an additional smartphone or wallet, 2 cup holders, a USB outlet, and then you will have a 12-volt outlet as well. Then returning to the center console, since we have that dial and that pad here, next to that will be your gear selector. So much like we see in a lot of BMW products, your traction control on and off, your park assist buttons, your start stop button, then you have your drive modes. That is right, Sport, Comfort, Eco, Pro, and you also have your hill descent control, your auto vehicle hold, and electronic parking brake. Now with the X5, as we're going to talk about during that test drive, Sport mode is actually going to be a great drive mode to be in at all times with this vehicle. For the standard storage compartment, it is somewhat deep here. You can store some tech gadgets, smartphones, and wallets. There will be another USB-C outlet here as well. And then to round out the front seating area, above, we are going to have a panoramic moonroof, which brings in a lot of natural light to the interior. Now for passengers in the second row, this begins the reasons as to why going with the X5 is a better long-term decision than going with the X3. If you're thinking long-term, the X5 is going to be the best choice here in the lineup. So you are going to receive right on 40 inches of legroom back here. Not a lot of vehicles in this segment are going to provide that amount of legroom. And when you put that into perspective, this is close to the Hyundai Palisade and Kia Telluride. Obviously more expensive, right? But you're going to have the interior space where you can accommodate tall passengers, growing kids. This is definitely family friendly and flexible. Also, what BMW has done, they've lowered the second row seats a bit to maximize that headroom. Even with the panoramic moonroof, I don't think tall passengers will be hitting their head on the headliner. Now when it comes to comfort though, these seats are actually very well bolstered and they're cushioned more importantly. So on those longer drives, you can just relax and enjoy that longer road trip. Also, and this is one of the reasons why going with the X5 makes perfect sense, you can fit a third person in the center. The center ramp isn't really that aggressive. Also, legroom and shoulder room wise, more than abundant. Now when it comes to the amenities, there's actually quite a bit here. First off, you have the 2 center mounted air vents on the center console, but then there's air vents on the B-pillars, so a lot of airflow to this vehicle. Also, you will have 4-zone climate control overall, so you can adjust the climate control back here. You'll have heated outboard seats, which is even better, and you will be able to adjust the fan speed and fan direction. Great stuff there. Now you'll also have a 12-volt outlet and 2 USB-C inputs, and then there's an additional USB-C outlet on the backs of the front seats, so a lot of connectivity here. And then to round out the second row seating area, you do get a center armrest with 2 cup holders. Then returning to the rear fascia to take a look at the cargo area for the 2026 BMW X5. As expected, you are going to receive a power liftgate. However, with the X5, this is a signature design, you are going to have a split tailgate. Now, why is this important? Because not a lot of manufacturers provide this, especially for a 2-row crossover. Well, you now have somewhat of a workbench. So if I want to set up my gimbal, I want to set up my camera gear, I can do so. Now that's kind of selfish of me, but if you're someone maybe going camping or skiing and snowboarding, you can do the same. You can set up your gloves or coats, whatever else, on this little workbench here. I love to see that. I think it gives this vehicle a nice touch, and it's a small feature that a lot of manufacturers overlook. But more importantly, it's going to be that practicality. So inside, behind the second row seats, you're looking at right on 34 cubic feet of room. Most importantly here is that's better than the BMW X3. So if you're willing to spend around $70,000 for a crossover, you have a much more family-friendly vehicle out of the X5. But also this falls right in line with many vehicles in this segment. So it's not missing out on anything here. You're also going to notice that we do have that cargo cover. So if you have any valuable items back here, no one will be peeking in and stealing what you have. And then when you lower the second row seats, you're looking at right around 72 cubic feet. Once again, right in line with all of its contemporary rivals. So if practicality is going to be a concern for you, the X5 should be on your list of considerations. BMW's value proposition is to be the ultimate driving machine. To provide vehicles that are fun to drive, that are exhilarating, that are performance-oriented. But what does that actually mean? How is BMW so different in this market, even today in 2025, where everything almost feels cookie cutter? Well, if you look at the rivals, whether it's Volvo, Audi, Mercedes-Benz, on the lower end, they're going to give you luxury, they're going to give you technology, but they're not going to give you a crossover that feels agile in the corners, that's fun to drive, that's going to really set the world on fire in a way. It's not going to feel really well-rounded. You have to go a little higher up in the trim levels to receive that, especially from Audi. I think the SQ7 is actually a really great product. But with BMW and the X5, to me, at least performance-wise, being on pavement, this is as close to getting to a Porsche Cayenne at $70,000 that you are going to find in this market. Genesis is not going to offer that, Mercedes-Benz is not going to offer that, and most certainly Volvo isn't going to give you a fun driving experience. Very comfortable driving experience, but fun isn't going to be an adjective you would describe with the Volvo XC90. With the X5 we have today, and the reason why I chose the Sport over the M Sport, is to see if this is still going to give you some agility, some athleticism in the corners, and also, is it a good fit for someone who's looking to not maximize their budget and spend over $80,000 out of this platform? And personally, having spent some time with this X5, I think a base X5 might be really all you need. Now, you had that B58 motor, gem of a motor, as I said before. The ZF 8-speed automatic transmission shifts smoothly, right? You also have quick shifts. So a lot of transmissions in this market are somewhat lethargic, and the sport modes don't feel authentic. You don't have that issue with the X5. In fact, the X5, even in this form, feels somewhat performance-oriented. But also with the suspension. We don't have the M Sport suspension, so you're not going to have that connectivity. You're not going to have that stiffness and rigidity. Yet, in sport mode, it can get out of its own way. It doesn't feel top-heavy. In fact, you can kind of hustle this crossover around in the corners in ways that you wouldn't feel comfortable doing so with a GV80, with a Volvo XC90. As you enter the corners, the steering gets a little bit more weighted and firm, providing a lot of confidence. And when you're on those weekday commutes, when you're just driving around in the city or suburbs, it's not going to be a mundane, boring, or overly relaxing driving experience. If you want to do that, just pop it into comfort, and it'll be like every other crossover out there. But in sport mode, this is where the X5 really does come alive. As we head into these corners here, not a lot of body roll. And I love the sound of this inline six. And that's the key difference here. To get an experience like this out of a crossover that isn't performance-oriented, doesn't have a V8, right? You have to spend around $88,000, $90,000 with the Porsche Cayenne. And that's where the X5 sets itself apart, why it's somewhat in a category of its own. Why the X5 is more well-rounded, more of a jack of all trades than a lot of its rivals. Now, when you get to the M60 level, though, that's where Audi, I think, has a great rival in the SQ7. But we don't have that vehicle today, so we're not going to talk about that particular comparison. But cross-shopping this with a Q7, Volvo XC90, Mercedes-Benz GLE, that's the big one. The Mercedes-Benz GLE drives like a tank. It is huge. You even feel it when you're behind the wheel. The X5 is giving you something a bit more unique, something that's a bit more out there. It stands out. And if you're someone who prefers a crossover that's more than just being for A to B driving, that's more than just being a family hauler, that's what the X5 is going to slot into place for you in your driveway. I will say, though, I do prefer the M Sport. You have the M steering wheel, the M suspension, the Shadowline package. It's a great package, it really is. But it might not be necessary for what you're looking for out of a two-row crossover at around $70,000. That's perfectly fine. Because I think what we have here for this configuration is exactly what a lot of you are looking for. And from a driving perspective, this is where I think the X5 wins out. Because I think you can say, well, I can get more luxury. I can get more comfort out of a Volvo, out of a Mercedes-Benz, out of an Audi. But you're not going to get the same performance out of those three models. Getting to my favorite section here for my reviews for BMW. Let's get on throttle. On the brakes, nice and strong and firm. Into the corners, some body roll there. And that's where the X5 beats out a lot of its competition. And I think that also right there is where you want to go with the M Sport package, with that M suspension. Because I did notice that the weight was starting to transfer a bit. But again, it's not as bad as what other vehicles in this market are going to be offering in a situation like that. Effortless. I wasn't even going full throttle there. 0 to 60 just above 4 seconds. I have a base X5. Incredible. Now getting back to the more practical aspects of the X5, as I am about to pop it into comfort mode. Let's talk about on-road comfort. Let's talk about interior insulation. One, we have large tires here for a base model, and ride quality is smooth. The suspension is very forgiving. Also, it's very quiet in here. This B58, unless you get on it, you barely hear it. And then to have that ZF8 speed with its smoothness, you don't really feel a lot of the mechanical aspects of this crossover when you're just driving around. You can almost kind of shut your brain off and completely forget about what's going on. Not safe, but that you're getting my drift there. Also with these seats with the Seraphim upholstery, they're very plush. And if you sit in this crossover long enough, these seats kind of form around you. So you're almost in your own little bubble here. When it comes to seat positioning, you sit very high up. Nice commanding feeling presence over the roadways, similar to the BMW X7. Also, we got to remember too, this vehicle is built on the cluster architecture platform. So a lot of rigidity, a lot of refinement here. Now, when it comes to overall visibility, nice panoramic view. A-pillars really aren't that aggressive. They are set off a little to the side there. So I don't think I have any blind spots when I'm approaching intersections or red lights. Taking a look at your side mirrors, I actually find them to be somewhat small for a crossover in this market. Surprisingly small for a BMW. And then looking out behind you, even with the headrest in the way, nice clear view there. So no issues when it comes to visibility or blind spots. So really nice to see here with the X5. But all in all, what we have here for this model for 2026, I think, in my opinion, is the last sensible BMW in the lineup, aside from the 3 Series. Now, some people might say, what about the X7? Well, the X7 is a bit expensive there, so that might be something to take in consideration. But when you take a look at the design, the X5 still looks like the old BMW 5 Series, the previous generation 5 Series. And I like that. I really like that. This crossover has that same traditional styling that BMW was always known for. Not so much now with the M3, M4, M2, and their EV products also with that X3 we had featured a week ago. And that's where I think the X5 for this generation, one, is aging very well, still looks new and contemporary, but also, in my opinion, is the quintessential BMW, even now in the 2020s. So if you're someone looking for that, you don't want anything outlandish, anything outrageously designed, or really out there, the X5 is the last vehicle in the lineup that is going to still give you the traditional values that BMW's always had. No hexagonal steering column or steering wheel. Yes, the technology, not a huge fan of it. I prefer the older BMW tech software. But it's still not going to feel too futuristic and too out there where it's going to be this massive learning curve. And I think that that's what a lot of people in the luxury markets are looking for. You know, just a vehicle that is sensible, that's usable, that's family friendly, that's user friendly, and the X5 checks off all those boxes. And when you take a look at the rivals, it's going to boil down to the performance. I really think so. Because I think you can say, well, Volvo's offering better comfort, you know, Mercedes-Benz might have better tech, or Audi has a better tech package. But what can't be disputed is that BMW has a better driving crossover. It is the ultimate drive machine in this class. And that, to me, is where this vehicle stands out, especially at $70,000. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this quick review for the 2026 BMW X5. If you did, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys next time.